You are listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network.
من هناك لشوارزنيجر
Ya lo hace, pierna derecha, directo al arco, golazo, golazo, golazo.
This is Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio, your new live show about the beautiful game in all its glory, with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee. MLS, EPL, La Liga, Champions League, all is fair game. Powered by the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us at sportspodcastingnetwork.com.
And good day, good night. Welcome to Off the Woodworks. It is Friday, Duane. Our Fridays have become very busy now with the amount of games going to be played. Like the amount being played this weekend, it's kind of mind-boggling when you're looking at it right now. There'll be some Premier League, some Europa League, some MLS games, some Italian games, some French games, some German games. I don't have enough time to watch everything.
Belarusian games? Any Belarusian games you're familiar with this weekend?
Well, there's probably going to be Russian games for sure.
Anyway. It's the game goes on and on. Of course, the game's back in Major League Soccer. There won't be a game in Boston. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Also, Kevin, I just want to point out that your Freudian slip there. This is, in fact, Soccer Today, not Off the Woodworks, but we'll just let that go aside.
There you go. It's back, right? The Montreal Impact have started last week, and tomorrow night, after the Montreal Impact's home opener, you can look for a brand new Off the Woodworks. But this is Soccer Today. And Duane, let's start here. You were indisposed yesterday. You had on assignment Barcelona Wednesday have made basically headlines across the world, have made Paris capitulate in the last dying moments of this game. What is your overall take of the last 8 minutes of play?
Well, obviously, look, there was an inevitability about it, and I'm not going to lie. I watched this after the fact, and we were watching it at the City Pub on Wednesday on our phones, basically, like madly refreshing as the scores came in, because we looked and someone had actually said, "Oh, Barca's out. PSG got the away goal, so that means Barca has to get 6. There's no way because it's in the 80th minute or whatever." Of course, then a few minutes later, it was me. I go on my phone. Oh my God, it's 5-1, and then we all started madly refreshing the phones to figure out what the hell was going on. The obvious comparison, and this came up at the time, and I have a bias to it, is how does this compare to Aguero and City in 2012 with the comeback, 2 goals in 3 minutes to win the Champions League, to win the Premier League. That is a very dramatic moment that most of us saw, that a lot of us that love this sport remember very well. Some not as fondly as others. If you're a United fan, I suppose, or a QPR fans, although they were already celebrating. That's kind of the forgotten one about that, is QPR realized with about 5 minutes to go in that game that they had secured the avoidance of relegation, and they kind of relaxed.
They couldn't go down, so they didn't care about the last 5 minutes. Like, oh well, fine, we're not going down at least. Well, not that year. It happened the year after.
On mancity.com now. It's what it was, mcfc.co.uk at the time, but they have what they call the tunnel cam, which is just like a camera that's mounted in the tunnel, so you can see the people coming off from that game if you go back in the archives. And there are QPR players that seem as happy as the City players. So draw your own conclusions from that. But at any rate, how does this one compare? And look, I believe that 2 goals in 3 minutes to end a 44-year title drought is slightly, and I do emphasize the word slightly, more significant than 3 goals in 8 minutes to advance to a round that a club like Barcelona would have been expected to be there easily enough, like in terms of what the overall result meant. But in terms of the dramatics of it,
it would have been a final point. I agree with you. If this would have been for a trophy, if Barcelona was making that comeback for a trophy, it would have been totally different. You would have you'll remember it. Now we'll remember it, but it depends. If Barcelona goes on to win the Champions League this year, we'll remember it maybe a little bit more fondly. But if they burn and crash in the next round, and if in the next round they concede 4 goals in the away first leg too, then it's a different story. We rarely remember exploits in the world of sports when they're not related to a trophy or to a great moment. Because it was 4-0, this will be remembered a little more. But the trophy aspect would have made it even more memorable or even more improbable. But the way it happened with the Cavani goal, it was such a shift of momentum during that game. When Cavani scored at the 66th minute, the momentum changed. Paris got confidence back, but then Neymar and the penalties and the free kick. It's funny how set pieces and Neymar decided the game maybe on one weakness that Paris did have compared to Barcelona on set pieces. And it's amazing how even the third goal, which was all created because of foul on the goalkeeper on the opposition's half. That's crazy. Then the free kick, it bounced a little bit. Then Neymar chips it in. Zé Roberto scores, and Barcelona moves on. But it's the way it unfolded. I don't think we will see those circumstances one after the other creating that drama and that momentum and that vibe in the stadium for a long time.
Yeah, look, and if you're a Barca season ticket holder, you endure a lot of sort of dull nights in that stadium. You've watched that club. They'd probably be lying if they said that they were fully engaged all the time, because you've watched that club win 4-5-0 sometimes, and it wouldn't really be that compelling. But obviously,
so the rainy Wednesday at Stoke for the Premier League in La Liga and Canu would be a boring Wednesday at the new camp when you're playing a Copa del Rey game against La Coruna.
Yeah, or someone lower than that even. I mean, Barca wins 8-9-10-0 sometimes when you get in playing that low. But look, they'll remember that one forever, and you would if you were in the stadium. In terms of comparisons here in North America, some people sort of got their back up a little bit about this comparison, but on Sportsnet, they actually, tried to put it in context for a non-soccer audience. And one of the games that they brought up, non-Leaf fans will like this one, is when the Leafs blew the 4-1 lead with 10 minutes to go in the third period.
The Bruins, yeah.
Yeah, and look, obviously, on one level, it doesn't seem like that should be comparable, but on another level, it's kind of the same level of a competition. It was the first round of the playoffs. The Leafs were trying to do something historic for the first time. Well, not historic, but for the first time in a very long time, they were trying to accomplish something. They looked like they were done and dusted, and suddenly once the momentum shifted, they couldn't turn the tap off, right? And that's, I think, what you have to worry about if you're PSG is once that momentum shifted, they couldn't turn the tap off. And what does this mean moving forward? Because for the Leafs, it really did put them in a tailspin for a couple of years that they only are sort of maybe now coming out of. Again, not direct comparison, but I do understand the contextual aspect of telling that to a non-soccer audience. It is similar. It will be remembered in much of the same way. It's not a historic game. The Bruins didn't win the Stanley Cup that year, but it was something that they probably still think of and still gets made jokes about and stuff like that. And that's why I think where this one will come down. And the City of Guerrero one is a different level, I believe.
Yeah, for PSG, though, you're kind of thinking now, does this extraordinary defeat, leaves the club in a state of tailspin, like you mentioned? They have an easy game. So Sunday, they're going to play Lorient in the league, in Ligue 1. So it's not necessarily a complicated match. But at the end of the month, April 1st, actually, the beginning of next month, they're playing the final of La Coupe de la Ligue in French, and they're playing Monaco in a knockout winner-takes-all game. Will it leave some traces for that match? That's when I believe we'll see if PSG can win, because Monaco is a Champions League caliber team. Monaco with a Falcao is very dangerous if Falcao is up for that game. And April 1st, and it won't be a joke, but PSG, could they bounce back? That's when we'll know.
Yeah, and it's got to be difficult for a club like PSG at this point, where they would have, they're kind of bored of winning the league. They've done it several years in a row. They're in a bit more of a fight this year, but nonetheless, for a club of that wealth in that league, and by a bit of a fight, I mean they're in second place right now, so they do have to rail in Monaco, who is on form. But it's just not quite as, it doesn't have that same sort of level of inspiration for them. So can they turn it up? Can they get past this and move on to catch Monaco, to hold off Nice? these are the questions, because you don't want to drop too far down there. They especially want to hold off Nice, because then, they would have to go through a qualifying sort of role next year in the Champions League. And the ambition and money of that club, they really should be winning that title
Yeah.
every year. So
Well,
it'll be curious to see how it works.
it's funny how, what it reminds me of, Ligue 1 right now, Dwayne? The first Beckham years in the Galaxy, where the entire rest of the league had to figure out what to do to compete with the big spenders. And we've seen teams in France finding ways to get players, maybe misfits, aka Balotelli at Nice, but turned out pretty good. Look at where they are now. And other clubs like this, Saint Etienne, the rise of Saint Etienne lately, have a decent season this year. Nice in third, it's quite impressive. And you have Marseille with the return of great players, are probably going to have more success in the next few years with some Payet back in Marseille. So you do have some great teams that are rising, not with money, but finding ways to compete with PSG. And this year, Ligue 1, it's kind of like a fun laboratory experiment to look at.
Yeah, look, we don't talk about Ligue 1 very much, but Monaco is having quite the season, and
Monaco has money though. That's the difference. Monaco is the one where they even had enough money to lend their star players for a few years, go to Chelsea, flop, and come back and be successful again with us.
Fair enough. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, City fans should be wary. Monaco's home form this year is off the charts. 12-1-1, 50-goal score for 10 against. This is a club that's it's not going to be easy to reel in, or to reel in is what I'm trying to say. Fishing analogy for the win, but nonetheless, it's for PSG again. That psychology around this is it's going to be difficult to see how they do it, because again, they've won this title so many years in a row. They had so much hope about the Champions League. They had to think, if they've got past Barcelona, that they maybe even had a chance to go on and win this competition. If you beat Barcelona, if you slay the best, to beat the best, you have to be the best. You have to beat the best.
No, to be the man, you have to beat the man, and Barca are the man. If you beat the man, who else is there to beat than Ric Flair? You just beat Ric Flair. So
exactly. Well, Ric Flair's kind of
Barca is Ric Flair. Wow. Woo, indeed. Actually, it's quite a good analogy. Barca is Ric Flair. Hashtag Barca Ric Flair.
All right, there we go.
Hey, it's Friday. We need some levity in the show. All right, Duane, we'll take a break soon and talk about a little bit of bits and bytes before we do an extensive, yeah, it's Friday, an extensive games of the week, because there's a lot. Now we're looking at Barca, Duane. 10 times in a row, 10 seasons in a row, they qualified for the quarters in the Champions League. Are we dismissing, are we too quick on the trigger of trying to forget about Barca? Every time they have a slip up, we always say, oh, is it the end of Barca? Is it the end of an era? Should we just shut up and watch them and appreciate them for what they are?
Yeah, of course. That said, I think when you look at this particular Barca team, there are some vulnerabilities there that have been both demonstrated in the league and with PSG in that first leg. So if you're one of the big boys in this competition, as a club like Bayern Munich say, that would not be for Bayern Munich, who laid one on them a couple years ago, if you recall, they're not going to be afraid. They're not going to, soil themselves in the last 8 minutes of a game if they have the lead like that. So if you're Barca, you celebrate this moment, but you then sort of get back to the drawing board, because I think there is, like I said, some vulnerabilities that have been exposed here. And do you still rate them as the favorite for this Champions League? I don't think you do. I think, Bayern and Real Madrid both look better suited. Maybe even Atleti, because of their success in this competition over the past few years, might be able to knock them off in a two-legged tie. So I would put them as maybe 50-50 to get back into the semifinals based on what I've seen for the rest of the draw. Now, that said, to answer your question more directly, of course we write them off too quickly, because the narrative of sports is you want to crown champions and knock champions off. You want to create that sort of black and white narrative, as I said, and it's very easy to get caught up in those storylines where the reality is much more gray. And I think this Barcelona team is very gray right now. They are very top heavy. They're very attacking heavy. That's why they're able to score 3 goals in 8 minutes. But they're also allowing a lot. They did allow 5 goals in that tie. That's not something that's necessarily going to win you a Champions League unless they can tighten that up, Kevin.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll take a quick break and we come back with some bits and bytes. The bits and bytes on Soccer Today. A lot of things going on, Duane, and we've talked about it quickly with Jonathan Tannenwald earlier this week, but it was announced earlier today that Major League Soccer and Univision are teaming up to broadcast 22 games on Facebook. So you will be able to watch some MLS on your phones anywhere you are on transit. Just touch that screen, just touch the link when you see it on your feed, and you'll get the game live anywhere.
Yeah, if you're Canadian, and many of you listening to this, of course, are, you might want to make sure your data is up to date in terms of the rates we pay for cell phones in this country. But nonetheless, certainly that is an advantage. The only complaint I would have, and anyone would have, is that I, like many, pay for MLS Live. So does this take away from that? Like, if you start giving me the stuff for free, why am I paying for it?
But it's only 22 games compared to the hundreds and hundreds you have available on MLS Live. The difference too on MLS Live is you have the archive aspect where a few days, 1 or 2, if the blackout is in effect, and if not, just after it's done, you can actually rewatch the game, which is not the case. Well, actually, on Facebook, if you go to, you can actually archive the feeds too, but it's not in the same way. It's only 22 games, so you do have the choice out of market and the choice of game to watch with MLS Live that is different than you do have with that Univision Facebook broadcasting partnership.
Fair enough. Yeah. The best thing about MLS Live, and we've said this many times before, is the 20-minute archived games. The larger, if you don't know what that is, they take a 90-minute game and they get to 20 minutes. So you're not getting just a highlight package. You're getting something a little bit more. It allows people like Kevin and I to digest the league in a way that's time manageable. So that is one of the best qualities of MLS Live. But that,
because basically what it is, it's your highlight package, but included defensive highlights. So you don't just have offensive highlights, basically.
Yeah, you get a bit of an understanding of a flow of a game by watching the 20-minute games, and you can watch 3 in an hour, right? So it allows you to watch basically parts of every game. I don't know if I hit 100% in any given year, but I tend to hit probably at least 50% of games. I watched the 20-minute highlights of it over the entire season, which gives me, as someone who tries to analyze this, a better idea of what's happening. I can't sit down and waste 90 minutes of my life watching, the Colorado Rapids win 1-0 at home week after week, right?
And you know what? You're not going to waste 90 minutes of your life this weekend watching New England versus Orlando because it has been postponed due to extreme weather condition forecasted for the Foxborough area.
Yeah, or winter, as we like to call it up here, right?
Just another Saturday for us here in Canada in March.
Yeah, Canadians like nothing more than make fun of Americans about the weather, and I haven't looked at the report to quite know. Here, I'll pull it up while we're talking, but
yeah, well, you make fun of Americans. I still make fun of Torontonians for that. Remember that year when there was like 5 centimeters and they called in the army?
It was more than 5 centimeters, and it wasn't the people of Toronto that called in the army. It was Mel Lastman, and it was so that they could get the side streets cleared to allow the emergency vehicles through. However, no one wants the nuance of that situation. They just want to say Toronto called in the army to shovel snow.
Exactly.
Right now, it's only -1 and feels like -3 light snow. Snow is supposed to stop at 12:40 p.m. In Boston, so I'm not too sure what exactly their extreme weather is, but
we'll see.
We were all hopeful to get the orange ball out there.
Exactly, that's what
I'm sure
Jonathan
the Minnesota
mentioned.
United fans are.
Jonathan mentioned it this week. We want to see the orange ball, but guess what? It's not going to happen again.
Yeah, it does seem like an odd decision. Well, I guess it's so early, and MLS might just look at it like that. Is that, why take a risk at this particular point in time? Although you've got to think that if you're New England, it's got to be frustrating because it would have been their home opener. We'd make fun of New England for not having a lot of fans, but they do have diehard fans like any team out there. So those guys have been geared up and ready to go, and now they have to sort of shift it down. And not only do they not get a chance to go out and see their friends that they maybe haven't seen in 4 months, but they now don't have any game to watch, right? So, and if you're also Orlando, I think it's an advantage almost for the Lions to not have to go up and play in March. Now they'll probably reschedule this during weather periods that they'll be more used to. So it doesn't seem like it seems like a bit of a quick decision. I don't know why they couldn't have just waited, but
Yeah, we'll see
nonetheless,
though if there's a front that we haven't seen, and there's like 15 centimeters dropped on the stadium by game time. Maybe then we will realize that it was a good decision. So there's always that caveat of unpredictability with some weather.
yeah, it's I guess with the flights too, and that might be part of it because MLS doesn't use charters, as we belabor all the time, that they just might be worried about having a team get stuck up there and having to spend 3 or 4 days, lose training time and things like that if there's a weather delay and there's a massive cancellation of flights or something. So better safe than sorry, I guess, when it comes to the travel and safety issues like that. But we all like orange balls occasionally. We might see that. I don't think we'll see it in Minnesota this week, but eventually one year, Minnesota gets a little more snow than I think probably. I would suspect that of the MLS markets now,
True.
Minnesota is the most likely to have an orange ball day. It
Or
is
Montreal,
much further.
or Montreal, obviously.
Yeah. Well, you. But
Well,
when
we'll
you
play in the stadium. Yeah, true. We'll just play indoors. So
there you go.
No, but
you looking forward to your opener?
Exactly. I am tomorrow. Seattle, the defending MLS Cup champions, are in town for what's going to be a makeup game for the Montreal Impact, having lost their first game this season 1-0 in a bad performance on the road in San Jose. Now in Montreal for their home opener, are expecting crowds of about, I would say 29, 30,000. If that's the case, it'll be a success. The lower bowl should be filled, in my opinion. And the last time I checked Ticketmaster or Ticket Pro last night, the lower bowl was almost filled, a few hundred seats here and there in the purple and general admission section. Now, Duane, what's interesting to me, browsing and looking at news for this Bits and Bytes segment, Marta, the Brazilian women's soccer superstar, apparently there's links with the Orlando Pride, and apparently it's a done deal. So Marta to the Pride could be a good get for the NWSL when in an off season where all the big names of the NWSL are going to Europe, Marta might be coming to America.
Fair enough. Just quickly before I address that, I did want to get this stat out for Impact fans listening out there. You should be the favorite since Seattle has been held off the shot streak in its last game in Canada, at any rate. Moving on from that.
They haven't get a shot on net.
Yeah,
true. During the MLS Cup.
Marta, this will not be her first venture into America. She obviously played in both of the previous leagues, I believe. First time in a while. She's not the best player in the world, but she remains in the women's game outside of the big U.S. stars, clearly the most famous and popular of the international players.
She's like basically the Ronaldinho of women's soccer. She's not the best anymore, but her popularity and her reputation is right there in front of her.
Yeah, it's why she won so many FIFA Player of the Year awards, even after basically she was no longer dominating. And look, she still has skill. We saw it at the Women's World Cup here in Canada in 2015 and at the Olympics as well in Rio. We've seen that she still has things to contribute out there, obviously at an NWSL level. I believe that she will make already pretty stacked Orlando team even better. And they do have a lot of ambition down there, and you got to give them credit for that. They didn't quite get into a playoff position last year, but in their first ever season, but they certainly, in terms of coming in and making noise and signing players and trying to do the right things to grow and develop the sport down there. You have to give Orlando a lot of pride, a lot of credit is what I'm trying to say. The pride get credit.
And then with the new stadium situation, they have a new place to play. Will be happening in Orlando.
Yeah, and look, they're sort of emulating the Portland model, the Thorns model, sort of east, right? Like southeast in this case. And I do believe, based on what I've watched out of them, that they look geared up to be perhaps one of the powers of that league year after year. It is a league in my mind that if you have progressive ownership, and progressive in the sense that you want to win in women's football rather than pander to them. I guess that's not progressive, more than just common sense, but nonetheless,
they're willing to put the money where their mouth is, basically, too.
Yeah. If you have someone that's willing to invest a little bit more, then I think you can be successful in that league. You can provide them with great stadium to play in, provide them with all the amenities around that. And from anything I've ever heard is that a lot of the women that are down there just really quite enjoy playing for that club. So I do believe that this is another look at their ambition. I don't know what the future is, whether NWSL has now into its 5th season, and we'll probably get Bo on or someone to preview this in the days ahead. It's got a little while before we have to worry about it, so we'll give it some attention down the line. Whether they would be looking down the line to have some kind of beyond the allocation player or designated player rule or something like that, whether that would be the next evolution of this league. I mean, we're still, I think we are at the point now where it's not in danger of going anywhere, and that's significant in women's club football in the United States. But what is the next evolution? Maybe I'm looking too far ahead, Kevin.
And what is the next evolution of Major League Soccer? Is it going through Zlatan Ibrahimovic? That's the question, Duane.
Yeah. LA, I guess, is the rumor.
Apparently, the offer has already been made from the Galaxy to Manchester United for the 2018 season.
Is United willing to give him up?
If they it depends what the money offer is, right? Because they got him on the free transfer. So for financial fair play reasons, might be a good idea to sell him whenever you can.
But yeah, look, I always am careful when I'm trying to analyze Manchester United because of my well-deserved reputation. But I think intellectually speaking, completely taking the emotion off the table, that if I'm a United fan, I'm not necessarily convinced I would want to get rid of Zlatan just yet, because he's been so important to their season this year. Where are they without him? Are they even in a Europa League spot? I'm not entirely sure. Did they win the League Cup? I don't know. So can they afford to take the money and run? I just don't know. He'll have a say in it, obviously, and that's the other part of this. And I do believe that Zlatan, in many ways, has always been the perfect DP for this league. He combines both the showmanship, the sort of interest, like salesmanship that you want in a DP. He's kind of what the rule, it's not what the rule was written for. It was written for David Beckham, but the next era of this, Zlatan is the person that you would most want to bring in, if you, especially starting a new team.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Well, it would be the Galaxy, not the LAFC. That's been rumored, but still, it actually dwarfs the plan of Chicharito, because if Zlatan comes to town, city ain't big enough for both of them, and Zlatan will get the headlines.
Yeah, well, I think he might get the English headlines.
True. Fair
the
enough.
Spanish headlines are a different gig, and that's, of course, the market you're going for there. Is the little P a better signing long term? I think so. I think he's got more years left. But Zlatan, as we've seen this year, he would do okay in MLS. he would be quite effective in this. Would he be as good as a Giovinco? I think so. I think he might exceed Giovinco a little bit, because his level. And if Zlatan comes in, he would be undoubtedly, in my mind, the highest. Well, okay, I'll take that back a half step, because you have to sort of evaluate what Pirlo was at his prime.
But at the moment, like, Pirlo didn't dominate the world of football the year before coming in, didn't create headlines in every single talk show that talks about soccer in the entire world in his season prior to coming to MLS, possibly. That's the case with Zlatan, though. Like, he's close to the Golden Boot in the Premier League. Like, that's crazy. He's not supposed to do that at his age, but that's where he's proving people wrong. And coming in with that attitude to Major League Soccer, he is going to beat Roy Lassiter's record in his first year.
Yeah. At his peak of his powers, he was, I suspect, the third best player in the world. Has any other DP ever come to MLS that at any point in their career been the third best player in the world? I don't think so. So this would make him, by far, on the pitch, the highest quality DP to ever come in. Now, he would be coming in that sort of, quote unquote, retirement league ages. But as we're seeing in the Premier League right now, he's far from done. So it's a very terrifying / intriguing possibility, Kevin.
Look at Drogba, which had a similar pedigree than Zlatan, when you consider one of the best players in the world before coming into Major League Soccer. At his heyday, Drogba was top 5 in the world, probably. And he was very effective in his time in MLS, and that, well, especially in the beginning. And that's in a different seat of his career. Zlatan never had the drop off that Drogba had in England and China and Turkey, and then England again before coming into Major League Soccer. He's actually proving himself right now in the Premier League, and coming into North America would literally be for me a Beckham times two. Not this, no, the 2.0, not times two. And that would be because, well, yeah, he did come to Montreal, play a Trophée des Champions with PSG against Guingamp a few years ago. But he wasn't the Zlatan of today. The media, the headlines, the showmanship, the attitude, the quotes, the memes weren't where they were a few years ago. Now it would be crazy. And I do feel that for the league in itself, you would have sellout after sellout, not at home, on the road as well.
Yeah, yeah. There would be very few stadiums where he wouldn't go in, where he wouldn't attract a significant amount of the quote unquote home crowd be there to see him. We see that even in places like Toronto that have good season ticket bases still are vulnerable to that kind of phenomenon. We saw it with Gerard last year when he didn't even show up. But anyway, that's
Pirlo. I felt it with Pirlo, Lampard last year, and Gerard.
Yeah. And we'll see it with NYCFC coming back into the city because Pirlo didn't play here last year, and that's going to, I think, get the Vaughan crowd down again. But nonetheless, and look, I am not immune to it either. I find it a very Henry, every time he'd come in, I would just, because that was bad years at TFC too. I spent an entire game doing nothing but watching Henry play, and it is eye-opening to watch a player of that caliber play.
That was something else. It's been a few years now, so we forget. But Thierry Henry with the Red Bulls, when he wanted to play, Duane's 3 goals like it was nothing. That Olympico, that the ball control, he could do whatever he wanted on the pitch in MLS, and we forget sometimes how good Thierry Henry was.
It remains one of the best goals I've ever seen at BMO Field, and again, this was the game that I was doing nothing but watching him. And this is why I think so fondly even of it. I mean, TFC wasn't doing anything that year, so whatever. He did a dummy. Like, it was just a dummy, but the way that he ran, the intelligence he showed, to have the understanding that Tim Cahill was doing the run he was doing, and those two were working together very well at this particular point. And that play that I'm talking about, and if there's some people out there that would remember this as well, the dummy he did in the South End at BMO Field remains like one of the most amazing plays I've ever seen live. And that was very late in that man's career, and that he was a guy that he may be come to think of it now that we're talking about it, he might be equatable in terms of the skill level of where Zlatan was back at the peak of his powers. So I kind of take that back, and he had such a great run as a DP too, and I don't know why we forget about him, and I think it's
because the rest of the team sucked, so that's why we forget about him. Because of course you remember what that's so Metro before the Red Bulls were the Red Bulls of now, before Jesse Marsh. All right, Mike Petke did win. We get close to win the Shield. I can't remember, but the Thierry Henry years, they were terrible. The rest, you had Robles that was good, you had Henry that was good, Cahill. And remember Juninho? Yeah, that didn't go out well. Remember Rafa Marquez? Yeah, that didn't turn out to be
that.
Exactly. That didn't turn out to be very good. And maybe that's why now they have more of a team concept, because they remember Rafa Marquez as a DP. But Thierry Henry, wow. It's starting to watch this league closely in 2011, I have to say I've been privileged to watch Thierry Henry play with the Red Bulls in Major League Soccer. I've watched him at the Stade Saputo, at the Southern Epic, I think, and it was, you're right, it is. So that's why I want Zlatan to come, and I want him to come as soon as possible. And the fact that he's playing for United now, one of the biggest, if not the biggest club, because of its popularity in the entire world, that would bring something else to it. We rarely have a player coming off a great club. We've seen what it did for Drogba and Chelsea, and that community that created the links between Montreal and Chelsea, the supporters exchange of banners. Those type of things could exist for United and the Galaxy, and that could come to be a very interesting signing, if not revolutionary signing for MLS.
Real Madrid is the most popular team in the world, but I think Manchester United is the most popular team in North America. Just to finish the Henry talk, Beckham invented the Beckham role, but I think Henry perfected it and showed what it could be, what it could mean for the league. And the next evolution would be as Zlatan, because he does have that other side. That Henry,
next evolution is Ronaldo or Messi after that, though, because there's not a lot of what bigger name could you get than Henry, Ibrahimovic, Drogba, Pirlo? Yeah, the only really evolution that it would be coherent with those names is a Messi and a Ronaldo if you want to continue an evolution of it.
Yeah, no, precisely. Look, yeah, he would be massive to come in here, and I think that he would instantly make whatever team he went to the favorite to win the MLS Cup, because I think does have the potential to score 30 goals in a year in an MLS season right now, based on what I've seen. And then you can ask yourself what that means for the quality of the league, and that's a fair question. And I think that Giovinco causes those questions to be answered sometimes too. That if a guy that was a reserve player for, sort of a squad rotation player for Uwe can come in and dominate the league as much as he's done, what does that really say about where the level is? And I think it is a good indication.
But just to be devil's advocate, that Duane, you always have as well in the player's perspective, when you see the opportunity there for you to shine, you raise your game a little. Was Giovinco as hard at work in training in Juve? Was Giovinco as motivated? And there's many different types of players, but one of the type is they like to be not necessarily pandered to, but they like to be treated with more than respect and treated and given confidence, and then they're going to run with it, and not the other way around. So there's a lot of different aspects of why a player would actually break through a starting 11 in Italy or becoming a superstar in North America. Maybe he would be playing the way he is playing in North America with Juve back then, maybe it would have been different too.
Yeah, we'll never know. We'll never know. And certainly we're privileged here in Toronto to have seen him week in, week out for the past 2 years. And again, for a third year starting in 21 days to TFC's home opener. That seems unbelievable, but nonetheless.
All right, Duane, let's take a little longer break and come back with the extensive games of the week. You're listening to Soccer Today on SPN Radio. You can find the on-demand version of this very show on iTunes, Stitcher, Feedburner, Podbay Player, Podbean, anywhere you get your podcasts under the Sports Podcasting Network feed. Subscribe to our YouTube page to make sure you never miss a live show talking about soccer today, the MLS postgame show, open lines after dark, 5 rings daily during the Olympics. Make sure you subscribe and give us a follow on Twitter at SportsPodNet, and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network. And we are back on Soccer Today. Duane Rollins with myself, Kevin Laramee. And don't forget, Sunday, 1 a.m., the MLS postgame show with call-in capabilities. I will send out the number on social media as soon as it's available. But I cannot wait to give you all the scores and the big talking points of the weekend in Major League Soccer. And you can listen to this live Sundays at 1 a.m.
Indeed. Also, quick little promotion as well. This week we relaunched, we'll call it, Canadian Soccer News to get back to be an active site. It was sort of dormant for the last 6 to 8 months as we did both a redesign of it, sort of fixed a lot of the quirks that made the last version of it really frustrating for both users and providers. There's a couple articles up already. There'll be a couple more today and the weekend. It will be a consistent site once again, a consistent site that is focusing a little bit more on Canadian Premier League news, League One Ontario, the PLSQ, anything like that, sort of like the lower stuff that gets under talked about. But we still obviously will talk about Major League Soccer on it because, as I said in my reintroduction article, kind of hard to ignore 100,000 people going out over 2 weeks to watch Montreal and Toronto. It's still obviously Major League Soccer has a major role to play. So
exactly,
CanadianSoccerNews.com.
I will try to put some of the podcasts as well on the website. I'm actually looking at it right now, Duane, and there's a big improvement since the last one. So take a look, CanadianSoccerNews.com.
Yeah, quickly, actually, this isn't on the archives, but I did actually want to talk on that Voyageurs Cup news yesterday. We should
absolutely, yeah, we forgot about it. Actually, you know what? Toronto won, but not sure. It's the winner of this year. If it's not Toronto, will face Toronto in a home and away playoff type of situation.
Just one home game.
One home game? Okay, so one game in Toronto.
Yeah, which, look, I don't think it's fair to TFC. I think when you win something on the field, it shouldn't be taken away from you. Obviously, I'm in Toronto, so some people out there might go, that's sour grapes to say something like that, but that's the sporting instinct in me that, can you imagine you win a championship which has, something, a prize part of it, and then they take the prize away from you? It's they reneged on it. And I think that's unfortunate. But the other positive of that, and just quickly, if you're listening to this and confused by it, because a lot of people are, what happened yesterday is the CSA announced the format for the 2017 Voyageurs Cup with the dates and all that sort of stuff. And you can go on CanadianSoccer.com to find that stuff out. But it's going to be 5 teams again. It's the same format as the past. Ottawa is going to play Edmonton in the home and away to decide who goes to play Toronto, as Toronto's the number 1 seed in this. And then the winners, and obviously Vancouver and Montreal will play each other. And then the winners of those 2 semifinals will play in the final, home and away, the same way it's been the last few years. As Kevin just said, if TFC wins the 2017 Voyageurs Cup, then they will continue as they were expected to play in that CONCACAF Champions League game in 2018. However, now because they have bumped that and have it in the spring, the CSA has said that if another team wins it, that there will be a 1-game playoff on August the 6th to be held at BMO Field. And I guess that's the one little sort of carrot that they gave TFC, because they took the berth from them. They had to give them something, I guess, and that would be it. They give them the extra home date, so they have the advantage in that 1-game playoff to go to the CCL. So it'd be very intriguing to see if Toronto doesn't win the Cup this year, what the teams do with that CCL game, because it's going to fall kind of just when the season's starting to pick up. Maybe Toronto's in a Supporters' Shield race. Maybe Montreal's in a Supporters' Shield race. Maybe Vancouver is, whoever, right? If they have to play that 1 game, then I'm curious to see what the lineups are. Regardless, that's what it is. But the other side of this, Kevin, and I think the more important one, is that they did announce that the League One Ontario and PLSQ winners, at least I assumed it was winners, they just said that those 2 leagues would be involved, will be part of the 2018 Voyageurs Cup. Now, that is one further step along the way to making this a truly open competition. That makes a lot of people happy. The one set of people that aren't happy right now are the PDL owners, because they weren't included in this. The reason why, it's not stated because they didn't address it in the press release, but you can put 2 and 2 together. The CSA does not want those teams playing in American leagues. They sort of are trying to encourage them in all ways possible to come and play home. And, if you're KW United, you have a solution in your backyard. You can play in League One Ontario, and that would then give you the opportunity to play in the Voyageurs Cup. So that, I believe, is what that's about, Kevin.
Absolutely. All right, games of the week. So starting tomorrow, we scratched the first game. So Chicago, Real Salt Lake at 2 p.m. Chicago, their home opener after a 1-1 draw in Columbus. Can they get the job done at home against a Real Salt Lake side that was not able to score a goal in their home opener in Salt Lake City?
Yeah, well, so, different sort of matchup there. Toronto presented. They played very defensively against Toronto. They sat back and sort of absorbed for a long time. I suspect that even though this is on the road, they'll want to get out in front of this one. Chicago is, as we said in that preseason preview, they became increasingly more intriguing as you started to read more about them and learn more about them and watch them in their preseason games and sort of get this idea that maybe this is a team that is ready to have that breakout season. So that's going to be actually, if we'd looked at the schedule when it came out 3 months ago or whatever, or 2 months ago, because it always comes out late, and we wouldn't have necessarily thought that would be an interesting matchup, but it sort of is now. TFC, obviously, Philadelphia, both those teams looking to score. That's Philly's home opener. Toronto, 2 games in the trot now without scoring a goal, if you include the MLS Cup Finals. So it's been a bit of a wait for TFC fans. 4:30 p.m. Kevin, the second one up. Sorry, the third one up in the day because we missed the Red Bulls Colorado, which we'll see.
Yeah, Colorado was better than we anticipated in their first match. The Red Bulls, will see if they can get a better result this time at Red Bull Arena. Philly, Toronto. Philly, after going to Vancouver, now to Toronto. A lot of travel in the first week for Philadelphia. It's at home, so they travel cross country. They're playing a second Canadian team in 2 weeks. Toronto FC on the road again to start the season.
Yeah, because the world would end if they allowed TFC to play a home game in the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season, Kevin. That's because we're in Canada, even though Minnesota is going to play at home in the second week. God forbid they put a game in Canada that's not in a dome stadium in the first couple weeks of the season, because I don't know, like there would be 10 feet of snow clearly as I look out my window, and there's
But
been
the
green
MLS
grass
Cup,
all winter. But
the MLS Cup final, it's fine at minus 15 and in December. So
it actually would be very uncomfortable there tomorrow because we just had a cold snap come in. But nonetheless, the point being, MLS schedule makers, just because there's a border doesn't mean that there's going to be 10 feet of snow. It's the same weather as you would find in Chicago or in Minnesota. In fact, the Minnesota weather would be worse. However, let's move past this.
Montreal, Seattle, home opener for Montreal at the Stade Olympique, 7 p.m. Houston, Columbus, 8:30 tomorrow. Surprising Houston. Will Kubo Torres continue on his domination after a great first week for them? SKC, Dallas, interesting matchup, Duane. Dallas made a statement last week beating the Galaxy at home. Now, can they go to Kansas City and beat the surprising SKC after a very decent first game for them? Dallas wants to beat Duane, the best team in Major League Soccer. Any second win on the road would make that statement even more plausible.
Yeah, look, Dallas, certainly a statement win in week 1 over LA, and there was a lot of speculation that they might not prioritize winning the Supporters Shield this year in order to sort of set themselves up for the playoffs. But it's also equally likely when we talk about this and think about this, that if they feel that they have the same amount of if they have the depth that they've created through their academy, they may feel they can compete on 2 fronts, 3 fronts in a way that previous MLS teams could not. So they if they can get into SKC, if they win back-to-back on the road against LA and SKC, that is an absolute statement. And you may have to shift your thinking that sort of a lot of people, myself included, put TFC as the Supporters Shield favorite at the start of the year. But if Dallas gets back-to-back road wins, as I said, against 2 top teams, then maybe you have to shift just very quickly into the season and think that they now are the favorites to repeat because they've done it before and proven they can.
Yeah, San Jose and Vancouver, a battle of the West Coast at 10 p.m. to finish Saturday's games. Going to Sunday, NYCFC versus DC United. For DC United, Duane, we'll see if it was a fluke, if they can continue on their great run of play. We're impressive at some point during the game last weekend. Now going to Yankee Stadium on a small pitch, can they recreate the great passing that we're doing last week?
Yeah, well, it's hard to in that pinball of a stadium. But look, I'm intrigued to watch NYCFC in this one, and I'm glad it's a standalone game so that we can watch it. They didn't look good last week. I don't think Orlando is a very good team, and they couldn't get it done with them on the road or not. So I believe that of all the teams this year that are due for a slip back, that NYCFC is the one that I most think of. And if you listen to Extra Time Radio this week, they talk a lot about how when NYCFC had their hot run that got them up to second place in the East last year, Super Frank, he was a big part of it. And he just has this uncanny ability to score weird goals off his butt and dives and everything
thighs, back heel, whatever you're not supposed to hit the ball with, he was hitting it with.
Yeah, which, and if it happens once, it's luck. If it happens 15 times, it's something you know how to do.
And watch his career with Chelsea and the small part with Man City. He'd scored the same type of goal. See, whether he's scoring screamers from 30 yards or poaching deflection type of goals. And, well, he made a great career out of it and the most amount of goals scored in Chelsea's history with that type of goal scored.
And he's retired now. So if, in fact, that was what was driving NYCFC's success last year, then they might be having in for a long year. We'll see. So that's an interesting one, Kevin. The one game that actually I am most interested in watching this weekend outside of the Canadian teams is that expansion derby.
The Battle of the Uniteds.
Yeah. 2 of the 3 anyway.
True. Well, you can't really have a game with three teams, right? So...
Yeah, true enough. Look, is Minnesota, it's the Minnesota side of it that I want to see. Obviously, it's their home opener, so it does have that, it's their franchise home opener. Yes, they had teams at the lower level, but this is a new franchise. It always is when it comes into the new league. So it is their first home game ever for this team. And they're coming off that 5-1 shellacking. So to get the full context of that game, I think we need to see this. Atlanta as well. We didn't really talk about Atlanta United last week that much, but I think that it really showed exactly why I picked them out of the playoffs last week. I'm not patting my own back here, but it's because that familiarity aspect of it, that's something that really matters and people overlook. They just look on paper and see the quality signings, and you ignore the idea that inevitably, if you bring in 10 guys in MLS, 4 of them aren't going to work out. So you have to factor that in when you're handicapping Atlanta. And when you put all this team together, only 2 players with MLS experience started that game for Atlanta. There's quirks to any league, and MLS is no different. And I think we saw that in the last 20 minutes when Marsh made the adjustments and Atlanta didn't respond, and they had a lesson. I still think they're very good for an expansion team, but they're still an expansion team. So it's an intriguing matchup both ways. Can Atlanta sort of dominate Minnesota and really put their stamp on this? And if they do, let's just say Atlanta goes up and wins 3-0 or something like that. Then my preseason gloom and doom predictions about Minnesota are starting to look a little less hot takey, a little more reason take at that point. But if Minnesota can rebound and get a result, or even just if they lose close, I think that might suggest that, okay, 5-1, maybe just Portland's good. And that's kind of why that is really, to me, the must-watch game of the weekend is that one.
And the stadium situation won't be easy as well for opposing team to come into Minnesota, play outdoors on a turf side that has football lines painted over at some instances, and some instances not painted at all. So it will be a difficult situation, a different place to go play until the brand new stadium in Minnesota is completed, until Allianz Arena is completed. But until then, they're playing at the Gopher Stadium, where Minnesota Golden Gophers are playing, and it is a more difficult soccer conditions. And
it's going to be very
you just added the weather. It's even more complicated because when the turf pitch is cold, damn, it hits you even harder.
It's going to be very MLS 1.0 on Sunday afternoon. You're going to go from a baseball stadium that's been repurposed to a college football stadium with lines on it, which is something that we thought we kind of moved past those in the soccer mostly stadiums that are out there. I hate to call them soccer specific stadiums because very few of them are. But soccer mostly stadiums are like what is supposed to be new MLS. But this is, like I said, back-to-back games that are going to look like 1999 again.
Yeah, pretty much. And the last game this weekend, Sunday, 7 p.m., the LA Galaxy received the Portland Timbers. So that will be interesting. Are the Timbers back on the right track this year? And can the Galaxy get a victory for their new core of players, new coach? It's the Galaxy 3.0, maybe, where we're past the Roy Keane, Donovan. There's no more traces of Beckham. It's now Gio's team. Can they get that first victory of the year Sunday?
Within 4 hours, we're going to have a better contextual understanding of how good Portland is, how bad Minnesota is, and what LA's rethink is. Because it's going to be Sunday's an interesting day across the board, I think. And I'm actually looking quite a bit forward to, I'm going to go wake up in the morning and Sunday, I'll watch, a little bit of the Europe, and then I'm just going to sit down and probably just get myself some good food and a couple, case of Diet Coke, and I'm just going to go. This is going to be a good day Sunday.
Yep, it will be a good day Sunday. Quickly in the Premier League, there's a lot of matchups. It was a 0-0 draw last Wednesday between Man City and Stoke, so we're not going to dwell on it. But March 11th, Hull, Swansea, Everton, West Brom, Bournemouth, West Ham, Middlesbrough, Sunderland has been postponed. Crystal Palace, Tottenham has been postponed. Arsenal, Leicester has been postponed. On Sunday, Southampton, Man United has been postponed, and Chelsea, Watford has been postponed, all due to FA Cup and other leagues. But Sunday, Duane, Liverpool, Burnley. Can Liverpool continue on a great run? They had troubles. They had a big win last week now against Burnley. Can they get the easy win at Anfield?
This is Liverpool this year, is that they're the only team that seems to want to play the top teams. They have the best record in the league against the top 6, but the record against teams below the top 6 is horrendous. So who knows what's going to happen with Liverpool? Yes, they should be able to beat Burnley. Well, Burnley's having a decent year, I think.
Well, they're probably going to get relegated, but hopefully they don't. For Canadian men's national team's sake, hopefully they don't. Scott Arfield of Canadian national team fame is playing for them.
Yeah. At any rate, it's hard to really understand what exactly is happening with them. Can they take them? Well, and also you got to look at who they beat last week and wonder about them. Most of the top six, however, are preoccupied this weekend. Kevin, obviously, this is the FA Cup quarterfinals. Goes Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, so you can get games all week. You've got Middlesbrough, Man City kicking it off at 7:15 a.m. I would have to think, based on that 0-0 result that you spoke of a moment ago, and again, I watched that game. I was one of maybe 70,000 people in the world paying attention to that one. It was a study in frustration, and at the end of the day, rather than it being 8 points back, it was 10 points back, and most people, if we hadn't already given up on it, said, yeah, that's it. 10 points is not going to happen from here. Even if they win the reverse fixture, that's still only 7. So really, unless you think City is capable of winning the Champions League, and I do not, then this is it. So they have to put all their eggs in this basket if Pep is going to win a trophy in this his first season at Manchester City. And I suspect that they're going to go out and go for that win against Middlesbrough to get it over and done with very quickly.
Yep.
There's a study in.
Sorry, I was just going to say, Duane, go ahead.
I was just going to say that what's interesting. Let's a little bit of trivia here. The Manchester Evening News did a statistical evaluation of City's draws for the last 20 draws in cup competitions. They've drawn a team that has been no lower than top 5 in the championship, all on the road. That the odds of that were something like 300,000 to 1. So they are going to earn any cup berth that they have, because they've had to play teams that are relatively close to them. I mean, City still should be favored against a team like Middlesbrough, but at the same time, those teams can get geared up for cup competitions and make it difficult in the big clubs. So at any rate, that's just an interesting little trivia thing, that this is City has not had a home FA Cup or League Cup draw against a weaker team. They haven't been able to get like the Arsenal back-to-back tier 5.
That's what I was going with. I was like, when's the last time you've seen a Premier League club get 2 non-league teams back-to-back? The 2 darlings. This late. And the 2 darlings, let's face it, of this year's FA Cup, Sutton United last week. Well, a few weeks ago, we all remember what happened with the goalkeeper eating that pie and all that. He lost. He quit, but a lot of things happened since then. But Arsenal, Lincoln City, the best of the 2. Lincoln City quarterfinal for the FA Cup for a non-league team. That's quite an accomplishment. Lincoln City, it might be done in the quarters, but they're going to the Emirates at least to have a great experience that every player of that team will talk to their grandchildren about.
For sure. And look, Arsenal are lucky boys when it comes to this. The way that they're on form right now, I don't think it's possible that they're going to lose to Lincoln City. That would be hilarious. That's the way to put it. It would be hilarious. And Wenger might as well just walk down the tunnel and keep walking if that happens.
Just take your jacket off, leave your jacket there, and just walk off the pitch.
Just walk out the turnstile. Don't even pick your stuff up. If that happens.
You walk out back.
Actually, you might not want to do that. You might want to wait till the crowd clears a bit first. But
yeah, because we're already protests this week. Can you imagine the protests if Lincoln wins at Arsenal?
No. All right. 2 other games. The Chelsea Man U. Look, Chelsea are going to want to win a double, so they're going to take this priority. Man United's already, they're looking for that weird little cup double thing that you don't see very often. Either way, whoever gets through this are they the favorite to win this. I don't know. I think if City advances, you'd have to put them up there with the Chelsea or United to be the favorite, or Spurs for that matter, to win it, because there are, as much as we've talked about the upset teams in this, you look at this FA Cup quarterfinal and you have what?
Yeah.
First, second, third, 6th, 5th, right? Like it's the top teams are all still involved with this. Spurs,
and it's this weekend. Yeah, sorry, Duane. I was just going to say that's where the buck stops. It's for Borough, Millwall, and Lincoln. The buck stops here.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's very possible that the semifinals are going to be Arsenal, Spurs, United, and City. You could have 2 derbies in the semifinal, or throw Chelsea in there too if you want. Bit of an interesting derby on Sunday though, the Millwall Spurs one. It's not one you see a lot of times. Obviously, there's some history in that going back. It's not the best history at times, so that'd be interesting to see how that one plays out. Millwall always always make things interesting when when they get into a big game because their fans are what they are. But
Exactly.
we'll see. The FA Cup will be the focus of my attention, along with Major League Soccer this weekend. Kevin, what will you be watching most for?
Major League Soccer and the FA Cup. Obviously, Monday we'll be watching the United Chelsea game, the Marino Derby. That would be fascinating. But this weekend, Major League Soccer's action week 2, and catch every single moment of that action Sunday, 1 a.m. with the MLS postgame show hosted by yours truly. Send us your game reports, your thoughts on games, whatever your feedback at mlspostgameshow@gmail.com. And until Monday, for Duane Rollins, I am Kevin Laramee. You can follow Duane on Twitter at 24th Minute and myself at Kev Laramee. And until Monday, for Soccer Today, but Sunday for the MLS Postgame Show, have a great soccer. You were listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us, sportspodcastingnetwork.com.